Every athlete begins with the same dream: to be remembered. The stadium lights, the crowd's thunder, the name on everyone's lips. It's intoxicating. But nobody warns them that the same lights that lift them up will one day burn them. Glory, when repeated long enough, becomes addiction. And like all addictions, it always ends in withdrawal. Fame is not a reward, it's a mirror. It reflects everything back, magnified: the strength, the weakness, the insecurity. When a player wins, the world worships their confidence. When they lose, the same world calls it arrogance. The identity of a human being becomes a public property, dissected and consumed, and soon, the player forgets which version of themselves is real. They live for validation, the roar after a goal, the headlines that call them hero. But those moments are rented, never owned, because when the goals stop coming, the applause stops too, and the silence that follows isn't peace, it's panic. The athlete who once felt immortal realizes they've built their entire existence on the fragile approval of strangers. Every camera flash hides a shadow, every victory hides fear, because behind every champion, there's a person terrified of becoming ordinary again. Before we go further into how success quietly destroys the mind it once empowered, take a second, subscribe, like, and tell me in the comments, do you think fame gives strength or steals it? In modern football, players are built to perform, not to understand themselves. From the first academy contract, their value is measured in numbers: goals, assists, market price. They learn early that love is conditional. The applause only lasts until the next match. The transformation happens quietly. The young boy who once played for joy becomes a brand. His name, his smile, even his celebrations, all polished for cameras. Interviews are rehearsed, emotions managed, authenticity traded for consistency. The player stops being someone, he becomes something. And the cruel part, everyone around him profits from that illusion. Agents, clubs, sponsors, all feeding off the version of him that sells best. The real person gets buried beneath the image. When he tries to speak honestly, they tell him to focus on football. When he struggles, they say winners don't complain. Then, one day, form dips, confidence fades, the phone stops ringing. The same journalists who once wrote genius now write finished. The same fans who chanted his name now call him overrated. He looks in the mirror and doesn't recognize the face staring back. Because it's not his anymore, it belongs to everyone else. This is the identity trap, a cage disguised as success. And when that cage starts to close, no amount of fame can keep the oxygen flowing. Pressure in football is invisible, yet it's everywhere. It starts in the academy, when a teenager learns that one missed penalty might end a dream. It grows in the first professional contract, when a signature becomes both achievement and burden. And by the time the lights hit, that pressure has turned into oxygen. They can't breathe without it, and they can't breathe with it. Every mistake becomes magnified, every movement analyzed. A misplaced pass can spawn headlines, memes, and hate messages from millions. For players, the line between support and scrutiny no longer exists. The crowd that cheers them also waits to destroy them. And it's not just the fans. The pressure comes from inside too, from the board demanding results, from agents chasing sponsorships, from families who sacrificed everything. The pitch becomes a stage, but the game stops being play. It becomes survival. They smile on screen, pretending confidence while privately collapsing. They post curated moments to hide chaos, and every "I'm fine" becomes another performance. The pressure never leaves, it just changes costume. Even victory feels temporary, like oxygen that runs out as soon as the applause fades. Some players adapt, hardening themselves into machines. Others burn out quietly, invisible casualties of expectation. Because in football, you can't admit fear, it's mistaken for weakness. And so they carry it all, pretending they were built for it. But the truth is, no one is. It always starts quietly. A missed chance, a small injury, a dip in form that everyone swears is temporary. But in football, time is a luxury no one can afford. The same fans who once worshipped you now whisper about replacements. The same journalists who called you untouchable start writing obituaries for your career. The fall doesn't happen overnight, it happens one doubt at a time. Confidence, once unshakable, begins to tremble. Each touch feels heavier, each mistake louder, and for the first time, the player starts to hear the silence between the cheers. It's the sound of being forgotten, and then comes the loneliness. Injured, benched, or out of favor, the player watches others live the life he used to have. The locker room feels colder. The game that once gave him purpose now feels like a cruel reminder of what he's lost. They call it decline, as if it's natural. But for the player, it feels like erasure, a slow, public unmaking of everything he thought he was. Fame doesn't just vanish, it evaporates, leaving behind only memories and headlines. And as the applause fades, the silence finally speaks. When the spotlight fades, the silence becomes deafening. Fame, once intoxicating, turns into a glass cage, transparent, admired, but utterly isolating. The player still walks into rooms where everyone knows his name, but no one truly knows him. Conversations feel rehearsed, friendships transactional. Every smile asks for something. At first, he tells himself it's normal, that success always comes with distance. But over time, the distance becomes emptiness. The phone rings less. Invitations stop. The same people who swore loyalty move on to the next rising star. Fame doesn't just isolate, it replaces. And that's the cruel paradox. The more famous you are, the lonelier you become. Because fame attracts people who love the idea of you, not the reality of you. When your value fades, so does their affection. Many players try to fill that void with luxury, parties, distractions, but when the lights go out, they're left with the same question echoing in their minds: who am I without the game? The realization hits hard. Football gave them everything, except the tools to survive without it. In private, anxiety takes over. Sleep disappears. The same crowd that once cheered their goals now comments on their decline. Social media becomes a mirror that only reflects what they've lost, and beneath the glamour, the human being begins to disappear. This isn't about weakness, it's about being human in a system that treats emotion as malfunction. And by the time they realize it, they're too famous to ask for help, and too forgotten to be noticed. When the final whistle blows, the silence that follows feels heavier than the loudest crowd. No one prepares you for what comes after the fame, the stillness, the confusion, the feeling of being invisible in a world that once revolved around your name. The routine that once structured your existence, training, travel, matches, vanishes overnight, leaving behind a void that no luxury car or brand deal can fill. Some players try to reinvent themselves, pundits, coaches, entrepreneurs, but few ever feel that same electricity again, because nothing compares to the roar of 70,000 people calling your name. Nothing compares to scoring that goal and feeling immortal, even for a second. But that's the cruel truth. Fame doesn't make you immortal, it just delays the moment you realize you're human. Many ex-players spiral: addiction, depression, bad investments, broken marriages. The tabloids call it fall from grace, but it's really just withdrawal. Withdrawal from the only identity they've ever known. Psychologists call it post-career void. It's not about money, it's about purpose. You can't spend your whole life being defined by goals, trophies, and applause, and then suddenly learn to live without them. It's like tearing a limb off your soul. Some eventually find peace, in coaching, in family, in anonymity. But even then, at night when everything is quiet, the mind drifts back to the pitch, to the noise, to the light, to the feeling of mattering. Because fame doesn't die, it just haunts. For the few who make it past the silence, there comes a fragile kind of rebirth. It doesn't happen in front of cameras or inside stadiums. It happens in small moments, when a former superstar wakes up without the sound of an alarm, steps outside and realizes that for the first time in years no one is watching. At first it's terrifying, because when you've spent your entire life performing, anonymity feels like failure, but slowly it becomes freedom. There's a strange beauty in being ordinary, in not being dissected, adored, or hated. For the first time, they can just exist. This is when the rebuilding begins. They start to rediscover things they once ignored: family dinners, forgotten hobbies, the quiet joy of time that isn't measured in minutes of added time. Some find meaning in helping the next generation. Others turn to writing, business, or coaching. The identity that once revolved around goals and contracts begins to shift towards something more human. But the ghosts never fully vanish. Every roar of a stadium on TV triggers something deep inside, nostalgia mixed with loss. Still, those who heal learn to live with it. They realize that football wasn't who they were, it was only how the world recognized them. And maybe that's the final victory, to be seen not as an athlete, not as a brand, but as a person who lived, failed, loved, and learned to start again. In the end, every player learns the same truth. Losing isn't just part of the game, it's part of being human. Because football, for all its glory, is only a reflection of life itself. Moments of brilliance followed by stretches of silence, victories that feel infinite, and losses that redefine who you are. Fame promises immortality, but delivers impermanence. The applause fades, the cameras move on, and all that's left is the question, what now? For those who built their identity on success, losing feels like death, not because of the scoreline, but because it takes away the illusion that they were ever invincible. Yet it's in this loss that something real begins to emerge: humility, perspective, and the quiet realization that worth isn't measured in medals. The players who endure, who truly transcend the fall, are the ones who accept that the game was never theirs to control. They learn to stop chasing applause and start chasing peace, to understand that the world's love is borrowed, and that real strength is learning to live after it's gone. Because every athlete eventually becomes a story, told, analyzed, forgotten, rediscovered. But behind every story is a person who once felt everything the world now critiques: fear, hope, doubt, desire, and above all, the ache to be enough. That's the psychology of losing. Not weakness, but awareness. The awareness that even the brightest stars burn out, and that's what makes them beautiful. So next time a player falls, or a champion fades, maybe it's not tragedy, maybe it's transformation. Because the game doesn't end when the whistle blows, it just changes shape. And if there's one thing football and fame will always teach us, it's this: sometimes the only way to win is to lose. Subscribe, like, and tell me, what do you think fame really costs?